Hello and welcome to Clouding the Senses, where I actually managed to remember to unmute and got everything else going right. Yay! Okay, today we're going to be talking about tanks. Now, I don't mean the M1A1 Abrams, or the Merkava, or the Sherman, or the Panzer, even though that's what I normally think of when I think of tanks. No, instead we're going to be talking about clearmisers. Yes, I don't know anything about cartomizers, and really, with the aesthetics, a lot of the aesthetics of the cartomizers follow the clearmisers, or vice versa. It's similar enough. And we're going to go back in time for this, so we're going to wait before we get to the modern ones. Also, I will not be talking about the rebuildable tanks, because that's actually going to be a different subject later. This is mostly about the ones with the basic heads. Okay. Well, some of the first tanks most people ever used are these. Your basic, cheap plastic bottom coil clearmisers. And how do they affect aesthetics? Simple. All the multiple colors. You can see right there, that's only a fraction of the colors I've seen. Well, of course, then you move on and you get these, the EVODs. Now, the thing about the EVODs is it's also just different colors. But it has a chrome one, hey. And for the longest time, the only real significant difference you could find in any kind of commonly available tank was different colors. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Pro Tank. Yes, that's the Pro Tank 1. And it had a different shape and a different style, to the point where there were even plastic copies of the Pro Tank 2 made. Now, the thing is, aesthetically, it had those nice swooping lines and a nice thick tank, but the only difference between them was different colored glass. Color, seeing a commonality in the aesthetics of the whole matter. Well, there were other things available, they just weren't as common and weren't as easy to find. Just as an example, there is the tumbler tank. Yes, this is not a bottle of some kind of nail polish or anything. That is actually an e-liquid clearmiser tank. And if I remember correctly, it took the same basic coils as the EVOD. And then there was the Ego E2. Those down on the bottom, those unusual shapes, those are tanks. Those are top coil tanks. And they were, well, apparently they didn't perform too well, partly because the battery that came with it was locked to 3.5 volts. I do not know what the ohm rating on the coils was, but it was probably somewhere close to 2. And then this means that for people who really wanted to change things, they had to go and do it themselves. And usually with old school style. For example, this beautifully painted tank. That's just some amazing detail for how small that really is. Or engraving. Again, this is remarkable detail these people are putting on these tanks. Barring the whole marbleizing of the metal pieces and the drip tips. And then I kind of have to show this because it's a perfect example. It's a K-Fun, which I said I was going to talk about your basic, fill-in vapes, but bling. Bling, bling, bling. Bling, bling. Ba-bling, ba-bling, ba-bling. So now what we have, sub-ohm tanks. Yes, most of the primary ones are there. And really and truly, while they all look mostly different, they all kind of look the same. But it's it's a metal tube with a glass piece and maybe some differences in the lathings, but they're all just the same thing, just different looks to it, different minor tech differences to it, and most of their looks were based on the tech and not strictly for appearances. It's just what best fits the method that they're using to create it. So there we have it, a basic rundown on aesthetics of tanks. This basically means that most tank aesthetic differences are not from the tanks themselves, but what the user does to it. I mean, I've seen, almost any kind of symbol engraved on the glass. I've seen different colored glasses. I've seen, bubble tips covering the outer surface. I've seen repainting the metal pieces. But the tanks themselves are pretty much utilitarian. Like I said, even the modern ones, the aesthetics may be slightly different, but there the form follows the function. It's what parts it needs to get its effect going, and maybe a little bit of like the notches on the Arctic, which could theoretically also be considered form follows function because it makes it easier to grip when you're unscrewing. I'm just waiting for the day when we actually do have a wider variety of just simply glass tank, metal pieces that do the basic function. We're getting to the point where there's so many out there now. They need to do something different to differentiate themselves from the others. And why not do it with aesthetics? Why not make it look cool? Alright, getting ready to go and let the fuzzballs back in and turn the music back on. And I thank you very much. I'll be right back.